All righty. Well, I'll go ahead and start. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here again, and it's nice to see faces, or not faces, but names. I'm not seeing faces, but names of people I've seen throughout the day. And my name is, well, it's Dr. Erin English. I work for the San Diego County Office of Education as the Executive Director of Innovation for one more day, and then I retire. So this is my last big official event besides promotions tomorrow, and I'm so grateful that I got to participate today with everyone. Um, and I'm working with the Jacobs Institute, who is hosting and facilitating this amazing event. And we will keep all the recordings in for others to use later. And we're excited to have you. And so who I'd like to introduce now is Dr. Emily Schell, and she's doing a presentation called Why Our World Needs Global Education. I'm so excited to hear you. And what she says is, this is what the presentation is about, is imagine schools in which educators, students, and community members work together to identify, investigate, and address issues of local importance and global significance so that learning reinforces engaged citizenship and contributions to a better world. And we're going to discuss the power and potential of global citizens or global education. Dr. Schell is an executive director of the California Global Education Project, which is one of the 9 discipline-specific projects that form the statewide K-12 professional learning networks known as the California Subject Matter Project. This is really cool. In this role, sorry, I had to jump in. I just say that out loud, my bubble burst, sorry. In this role, she provides leadership for global education in California and coordinates professional learning programs with university-based regional sites in Northern California, Central Valley, Santa Barbara, Long Beach, Orange County, and San Diego. You're busy. Dr. Schell is committed to social, racial, and environmental justice in a local and global communities and values the role of educators in seeking solutions to our world's most complex issues. And it is my absolute greatest pleasure to introduce Dr. Schell.
Thank you so much, Erin, and congratulations. I remember the day that I was promoted from the San Diego County Office of Education, where I served for 8 years as the History Social Science Coordinator.
Oh,
and there's so much life beyond the county office. So looking forward to seeing you here on the outside. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here at this conference, at this showcase, at this really unique professional learning engagement, and especially for coming to hear a little bit more and to discuss today global education, which is part of our comprehensive pre-K through 12 curriculum. It's just kind of tucked away in really unique ways by really creative and hardworking teachers. And so I thought, I would share a little bit of information and then take some questions or engage you in conversation in the remaining time. So I'll start off by saying that this past weekend, I had the great privilege to meet with 30 educators from across the state of California at our annual Teacher Leader Retreat for the California Global Education Project. And as you can imagine, our annual retreat has been on pause for the last few years due to COVID. So it was a very special gathering here in San Diego for the teachers and our regional directors who've been leading and maintaining the work of global education during these times of heightened uncertainty, extreme stress and fatigue, and the need for teachers to be even more flexible, adaptable, and patient than they're called to be during normal years. So not only have our teachers, students, and families faced the challenges related to the COVID pandemic, which includes the loss of family and friends, they've also had to deal with extreme weather and fire seasons, which is now year-round. They've had to deal with racial unrest and food insecurity, housing instability, job loss, financial stress, deportation, increased violence, war, and I could go on. But this is the world that we live in, and these are the daily realities that people face locally as well as globally. And so for one weekend, we brought educators together to retreat to reflect, and to reconnect with themselves, to reconnect with nature, to reconnect with their purpose and with each other. And we used story as a way to help them do that. Some of you might be familiar with the term talk story. You might know of the author Maxine Hong Kingston and her definition of talk story as a way to blend family stories and cultural myths, fantasy, autobiographical details, and history. And she's done this with her books like Woman Warrior, drawing upon her Chinese heritage and her female perspective. Or you may be familiar with the Hawaiian term, talk story, which is used to describe informal telling of story, which is talking with old friends or passing time by chit-chatting or rekindling old times. Now, as a woman of Chinese heritage myself, who is also Kama'aina, which means from the land of Hawaii, talk story has played a significant and prominent role in my life. And I thought this would offer the framing that we need for global education teachers who came together on retreat at the end of the most tumultuous year that they can recall. And so in planning, one of our teacher leaders from Long Beach Unified, she shared that her husband is an international storyteller who might have some stories to offer. And so we invited her husband, Baba, the storyteller, to join us in the opening and also the closing of our retreat this past weekend. And in between those stories that he shared, we referenced the wisdom and the ideas and the questions that he inspired through his stories. And so as we consider why the world needs global education, I thought I would share one of the stories that he shared with us this weekend. And it goes like this. Once there were two brothers who lived in their homes on their farms that were separated by a river that ran between the two plots of land. Now, from time to time, the brothers would come together and they would talk, and then they would argue. They began to argue more and more as time went on, and their arguments got louder and louder until one day, the two brothers became infuriated with each other. The younger brother said that he never wanted to see his older brother again. And the older brother replied, "Well, good. I never want to see you again either." And they parted ways, each returning to his own house, on his own farm, on his own plot of land. Well, one day, the older brother looked out his window and he saw an old man with a bag of tools walking across his land. So the brother went out and stopped the old man and asked why he was trespassing on his land. The old man explained that he was a handyman and he was wandering from place to place looking for work. He said that he could build or fix anything that the brother wanted and that he really needed the work. And so the older brother looked across the river over to where his brother's house was, and he said to the man, "Yes, I have a job for you. I want you to build a wall, a high wall, in front of my house along the river so that I never have to look across to that house and that farm and that land over there." The old man asked, "Well, who owns that land?" And he wanted to know why the man wanted a wall to be built there. The older brother explained that that was his brother, and they got into a big fight and they vowed to never see each other again. So he explained the situation to the old man. Well, the old man got to work after finding the wood and the materials that he needed. And after a few days, the older brother came out of his house to see what the old man had accomplished. And there he saw what the old man had built. It was not a wall, but it was a bridge that crossed over the river from his land to his younger brother's land. Well, The older brother was furious. He started to yell at the old man and said that he would not pay him for the work and wanted to know why he did not build the wall as instructed. Before the old man could speak, the younger brother came running across the bridge and he embraced his older brother. He said, "Oh, my brother, I always knew that you were the wisest of all. After our last argument, I thought I would never see you or speak to you again. I wanted to take back all of those terrible things that I said. You are so very important to me, and I never want to argue with you again. Thank you for building this bridge, this invitation to reunite and restore our family." The older brother was dumbfounded. As his younger brother hugged him tightly, he looked over to the old man and he said, "How did you know? And thank you." Well, the older brother asked the old man to stay and said that he would find him enough work to fill the rest of his days. This would be the brother's way of thanking the old man, who brought his younger brother back to him. The old man politely declined the brother's offer and said that he would be going on his way. The older brother was stunned. He said, "Why, old man? I offer you a warm home to live in and work to fill the rest of your days." The old man said to the brother, "I have many more bridges to build." And he continued on his way. So that's the story that Baba the storyteller told to us. And then he turned to the teachers in the audience and he reminded them that by saying, "You are the bridge builders in our world. As tired and frustrated as you might be, there are many more bridges to build. And that is the work you do as global educators." Well, I don't know about you, but I think Baba was spot on. I think our world needs less walls and more bridges. And it's through education that we are all better able to inspire and nurture more bridge builders who see ways to connect rather than divide, ways to reconcile rather than refuse, and ways to sow harmony rather than discord. So why does our world need global education? Let me just share with you 3 stories of what teachers, global educators are doing in our state today. And then I want to hear from you. First, let me tell you about a small group of teachers, and they're all elementary teachers working in Victorville in the high desert. Well, these teachers became just tired of hearing so much about the poor performance of their students on these multiple state measures. There were frequent turnover of school leadership and district leadership. They got a new superintendent. And during this time, some of the teachers got together and they said, if things are going to change, it's really going to have to come from us. We're the stability. We're the ones closest to the students. We can do this. And so the teachers reached out to their union. They looked for support from outside organizations, and they came across the California Global Education Project in their search. And as they came to work with us, they started to learn more about what global education is. And those ideas of global competence really resonated with them. It resonated with them as teachers, and it resonated with them as teachers of students. So they saw global competence as something that they wanted and that their students needed. They wanted their students to be curious about themselves and about others, about their communities, and about the world. These teachers wanted their students to develop the knowledge and the skills to investigate the world while recognizing that there are multiple perspectives on every issue, on every event. They wanted their students to take pride in their multilingual abilities and their cultural wealth, and to use these assets in their own learning and in communication with others. Most importantly, these teachers, they wanted their students to become leaders, taking action to improve their own lives, their own education, and to contribute to a better world. So what started as a few teachers expanded over the past few years into now district-wide professional learning programs, book studies, and other events that have resulted in student-led mindfulness programs, integrated social and emotional learning practices that promote good health and well-being, school recycling and garden programs, eco fairs, transformational journaling exercises on a regular basis, and literature-based classroom discussions about global issues and global citizenship. And this group of teachers are just getting started. Now, moving into the middle school domain, let me tell you about a teacher in the Central Valley who shared that she was very concerned about her middle school students living in a bubble where there was very little racial, ethnic, social, or economic diversity. And so as a humanities teacher in the middle school, she wanted to share her love of reading with her students. And so she began to seek out young adult literature that introduced her students to different cultures and to global themes and to social justice issues. She found books that challenged students to keep open minds and to consider their own perspectives as well as those of others, and to recognize the value of each person in a global community. However, it was not just the books that she added to her classroom library, it was the environment that she cultivated with her students. In what they now call the World Wonder Cafe, students read on comfy couches every day. They drink tea from real porcelain teacups, and they discuss the through lines of the books that they're reading and recommending to each other. They are finding lots of applications from what they're reading to their own lives and to their futures. So this teacher has nurtured seeds of respect and empathy in her class, and her students are taking those seeds, nurturing themselves as they move on to other classes and into their homes and communities. And we know that these students will carry these dispositions well into their futures. And then a third story, moving up to the high school level. Right here in the southern part of San Diego County, we have a large high school district, Sweetwater Union High School District. And in this district, there's another group of teachers and administrators who are convinced that global education is essential for their students. And so at one of the high schools, there are ninth graders engaged in a Global Scholars program in which their English, their human geography, and their environmental science classes infuse global issues and global competence indicators to help students gain the knowledge and develop the dispositions to understand and act on issues of global significance. So all of these students are learning about the Sustainable Development Goals that are presented by the United Nations as the global goals between 2015 and 2030 for all of us around the world to address. And the students are practicing the domains and the indicators of global competence. So the students learn from their teachers, they learn from their classmates, they learn from guests from the community and from local universities, and they learn from international students who are attending college here locally from all around the world and participating in our Intercultural Ambassador program. Students are learning through virtual exchange with their peers around the world. They're learning in their school gardens. They're learning through field studies off campus. They're also learning by sharing through their school clubs on campus. They present with us at teacher conferences. They attend and speak up at their school board meetings and their city council meetings, and they are very active on social media. So some of these students have even traveled abroad with scholarship support from our partner CIEE's Global Navigator program to study such topics as sustainability in large cities around the world. Now, in the spring, these students at this high school join more students from across the district, and they've spent the spring identifying and then investigating an issue of personal, local, and global significance. And these students develop projects either independently or in pairs or in small groups. And then they share these projects through presentations at a district showcase, which invites community members and local elected officials, school board members, fellow students, parents, and educators to learn from their research and their findings, and also their proposals. I have been thoroughly impressed as I talk with these students about their projects that range from the problems with palm oil production to equitable access of feminine hygiene products. Students have explored such topics as food waste, fast fashion, polluted watersheds, police violence, and immigration rights. In all cases, these students make personal connections to the global goals, and they propose solutions that they see as more equitable, inclusive, just, and sustainable. Why does our world need global education? Well, these three stories, I think, illustrate a desire from teachers who want to engage their students in meaningful studies, meaningful projects, and meaningful activities. They illustrate a receptiveness in our students who want their education to be relevant and useful. Our students want to know that what they're learning, the knowledge, the skills, and the dispositions, that they will help them outside of school today and in their futures. Now, throughout my career in education, 35 years now, I've been told that current events and global issues are too sad or too depressing to bring into a classroom. Who wants to hear about climate change, poverty, hunger, and human trafficking? Yes, the state of our world is often sad and depressing and infuriating and confounding. But does that mean that we ignore our problems, our challenges, and our opportunities? I believe school is a place for students to explore these events and issues where they can consider the historic, the geographic, the economic, and the environmental context of war and racism and prejudice, famine, natural disaster, pandemic, displacement, and injustices. A place where they can ask questions, they can take different sides on issues. They can consider the different influences on actions that they may take or others take, and they can prepare themselves for the many roles that they will play in a world of difference, a world of scarcity, a world of emotional strife, as well as a world of innovation and creativity and collaboration and kindness. School is where students continue to develop their identities and their relationships and their plans for their future. All of these require local, national, and global perspectives. Now, I have a son, can't believe it, he turns 30 this month, and he tells me that he doesn't want to have children because of the state of the world. Maybe you've heard similar things from today's youth. I remind him that he is my gift to the world, and that someone who lives sustainably and with a firm commitment for social and racial and environmental justice. He's someone who captures and interprets and contributes beauty in our world through his camera and his filmmaking skills. So I'm still working to convince him that our world will only get better when we have more globally competent and globally mindful people like him. And that many of us are working hard to ensure that global education is available to every student in order to make that happen. So imagine a world where all students at all grades and all schools remain curious and pose questions to better understand issues and perspectives. Imagine that they identify and then they suspend their assumptions and judgments while they engage in civil discourse and actively listen to others, and they consider multiple perspectives and opinions. Imagine students who are empathetic, creative, persistent, collaborative, and reflective. Imagine students who take action to improve conditions for themselves and for others while using evidence and values to guide their plans. So that in part is why I think the world needs global education. Global education does inspire hope. Global education has the power to create joy as students and teachers work alongside each other to explore issues and opportunities locally and globally. And global education definitely ignites potential. We have so much to learn from our students and our communities. So I'd love to hear why you think global education is important and what questions you might have.
Dr. Schell, that was beautiful. Your stories and everything was just so just soothing. Your stories are just so beautiful. And the first story just had me, I was riveted actually. Goes, what's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to the brothers? Well, thank you for that. And I'm opening it up to everybody. If you either want to chat in the box or if you want to speak out loud, we can give you, I think they can unmic themselves, unmute themselves.
Well, while we're waiting for folks to come off mute, in Huva, there were some questions for this session. One was, what is the impact on how kids protect themselves on a global mindset after going through COVID-19? And wow, I was honored to be in a discussion with a rabbi from New York on the spirit of curiosity during the time of COVID. And we had released a film where we interviewed lots and lots of students about what they were going through when this was before schools opened up and went while they were still online. And we learned a lot. We learned a lot from students and how concerned they were for their parents losing jobs, not knowing if they had to go find a new place to live. They were concerned about their friends who they said they took for granted by seeing them at school every day. And they were so beautifully concerned about their teachers too, and spoke about how they wish they had hugged their teachers or told their teachers how much they meant to them, because it was in the absence of being in school and being in that relationship on a regular basis that they learned from. And at the same time, what we've really amped up our efforts with, we like to say it shouldn't have taken a global pandemic for people to realize how interconnected we are as human beings on this planet, because we've been saying that since we started in global education. But we have started to work more in the area of helping students to understand how to navigate a world of uncertainty and a world of change, because it's not the first time, and it definitely will not be the last time that we are all called to collectively work through a very traumatic experience like this.
I noticed what you also noticed as the community seemed to come together, teachers, students, parents, families, just kind of gravitated together for support, and there was a different level of understanding each other and empathy for each other's work or what they were doing. And I'm also noticing, sadly, that part's pulling away now, and it's kind of going back. So what we're struggling with is how to keep that community together, how to keep that, we're in this together. People, it's
right.
like mindset, we're in this together. Are we going to make mistakes? Yes. Yep. Have grace when someone makes mistakes. So,
and you're speaking to a history social science teacher where we have to convince kids and politicians and school leaders about the importance of studying history, and so that's also part of it, which is we don't want to dwell, so we tend to let's just forget about it and move on, which means we haven't learned. And we did learn so much about essential workers and our healthcare system and about rents and evictions and all of that we need to learn from that. We need to move forward differently than we entered the pandemic as, and we need the leadership of our students who lived that, felt that, and are remembering and taking those lessons forward into their decisions and their plans for their futures. Perla, were you going to say something? I saw you come on camera there.
I was just going to say that was wonderful. Such important and impactful work that you're doing. Very exciting. Thank you for sharing such beautiful stories too.
Thank you. I've got lots of them, so
awesome.
Don't go too far.
I look forward to hearing them.
Oh, just in the other questions, there's someone says, this is so great, but I see that education globally is very fragmented. How do we genuinely connect all types of people together? And I can interpret this question in different ways. Education does look different in different nations, in different cultures, but also in different districts within one state. State to state education is very different. I will tell you, there are a lot of states who wish they had a global education project like California does, kind of leading the way with global education. But yeah, quality education is one of those 17 global goals. And there is a lot of, when kids find out that there are millions of, especially girls, but children who do not have access to education around the world, they're a little flabbergasted. And they want to learn more, and hopefully they look at their own education differently, and that they do have a lot to be grateful for and to not take advantage of or take for granted. But there is lots of fragmentation, and one way that we connect students from around the world is with our virtual exchange partners. We set up relationships using video conferencing or file sharing, so that student to student, they can learn about those differences from each other, and not from a government body or a political report. Anita, did you want to say something or ask something?
Yeah, I was just kind of sitting on observations I've had of young people that I've worked with. The younger generation is very curious and ready for this. They've been ready for it. Yeah. But the resistance I feel sometimes is from the older generation that is still very set in their ways. Like, we don't talk about politics, we don't talk about sex, we don't talk about, any of that, anything that can make you a little bit uncomfortable. But without discomfort, there's no growth, right? There's no development. Right. So I think that's a challenge that I'm sitting on. I wonder what you have seen work in your realm. What has the barrier been in terms of accepting global education? And how have you surmounted them?
The answer is kind of in the question for me. And that is, when we sit, and my mother's from China, and she raised me and my siblings and my son to really appreciate what we have in this country and in our public education system, because she didn't have that in China when she was growing up. And I think as long as we sit in this country and believe that we are the best, we have the best, and others should speak our language and follow our forms of government and live the way we do, and adopt our, economic principles, we're part of the problem. And middle school teacher who talked about the bubble, I've heard more and more from teachers wherever they are about the bubble. My kids live in a bubble, and I need them. In good conscience, I can't send them out to the world or off to the next grade level without recognizing that, not everyone thinks that way. Not everyone lives that way. Not everyone practices in the same way or has the same opportunities. So yes, I think historically there's been a pushback on global education, particularly in the 70s and early 80s. But we've come to, I think, a place now where, someone did ask a question about social media and what the role is of social media. The more we've become interconnected globally through our, through outsourcing, through California being a large economy, it's because we export so much of our produce, our invention around the world. But being able to pull up on your phone instantaneously what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening in Syria, what's happening, you know, across town, has kind of launched this, you know, propelled us in this direction of the need for global education. Because when you're bombarded with so much information and you don't understand what it is or how it is or even where it is, geography is such a big part of global education, you know, then we have a problem. And so students start to recognize the need for it. Parents, of course, as they think about how they want their students to be, as they go into college and as they pursue careers and their futures, they're calling for more global education. And I do have to say, in the last few years, the demand for global education has surpassed our capacity to deliver, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's not to say there aren't a lot of there's a lot of pushback, you know, a lot of concern over critical race theory and agendas around the pushing LGBTQ values or lifestyles and other things. But you know, we have some boundaries that we get to work with in public education, and that's very helpful. Did that answer your question, sort of?
Schell, I need to step away, but Priscilla was going to give me you rights as well as a host. And
yeah, I think I'm co-host here.
Okay, so when I get off, I just don't want to cut you off accidentally. I did that before to someone. So
okay.
when you jump off, you're welcome to stay on and finalize. But if something happens, I want to tell you how much I've enjoyed this.
Thank you so much, Erin. And again, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
All right. If there's others that are still on that either you want to share why you think global education is important, or if you have any questions. And if not, I'll just answer the last question that's in the feed here. Okay, well, the question, it came from Lisa Ridgely, it looks like. Oh, Edwina, did I answer your question about, you looks like you asked the question about social media.
Yes, I was just wondering, because I'm trying to implement more like social media into my own classes in terms of being able, because I'm working with like the international department to try to further more collaboration and communication outside of just our local, you know, community. And so I'm kind of trying to figure out, how do you utilize social media to encourage global learning and or global mindset, if that makes sense?
Yeah, thank you. Well, as I was speaking about the students in Sweetwater, one way that they connect with each other, and that one way that they share with the larger community what questions they have, what ideas they have, what concerns they have, especially as we encourage them to speak up for marginalized communities, speak up for what they see as an injustice, whether it's related to the environment or to race and ethnicity or to economics. And so they see social media as a great platform for them. I will tell you, with our virtual exchange program, I was working with one of our teachers in San Diego Unified, and her ninth graders were having a live virtual exchange with students in Jakarta in Indonesia. And the topic was social media. And so for these students here in San Diego to find out that these kids in Jakarta have to turn in their phones during the week, and they're not allowed to use their phones because of the distraction that exists there, was really fascinating. And as they started to think about what rights they have, and so that topic of social media, it's still fairly new for us as educators and for us as, you know, people in the world. It's been used for good. It's also been used for harm. And so there is a responsibility for digital citizenship. And so those are some of the things that we build into our work with students and with teachers, so that they do understand that, you can do a lot of damage by posting something. You can also do a lot of good. And but that student agency that we work so hard to help students, let them know they have a voice, and they've got a lot of power in the, the phones that they're carrying and the social media that they participate in. So good luck with that. Before the recording goes off, I do want to answer this last question, which is about problem-based learning. And the question is, where does problem-based learning fit into global education, or does it? And it absolutely does. Problem-based learning, design thinking, project-based learning, any type of inquiry cycle and project orientation where students are asked to ask really compelling questions and gather evidence and analyze evidence, look at multiple perspectives, and then generate kind of solutions to others. It plays an important role in global education. And with that, I'll just say that some people think global education is a course or it's something on top of, when in fact it is something that can be integrated into an English classroom, as we heard with the middle school example, integrated into a science course or a history social science course. There are opportunities, especially in international baccalaureate programs or schools with a global scholar program, to have global education outside of the classroom. But in most cases, in best cases, it is truly integrated. All right, Elisa, you just joined us. I think we're getting ready to wind down here, but is there anything that you want to share, either as a question or a comment about the need for global education? Okay. Ooh, that's good to hear. Starting a global ed focus at your school. Well, if you're in California, please do get in touch with me or with the regional director with the California Global Education Project. And we will be so happy to support you in those efforts to, oh, yay, you're here in San Diego. Can I ask what school or district? But do know that that's why we exist. We are here to support you, especially if you're looking at going school-wide with a focus. We can come in with professional learning support, help you with the framing or planning or curriculum development, whatever it might be. Ooh, Dimensions Collaborative School. Is that a community school by chance? I've not heard of your school. Your charter school. Okay, well, Elisa, I'm going to put my email in the chat here and invite you to contact me and let me know. And we can just have a chat on the phone or on Zoom or meet up somewhere, but I'd be happy to help you with that and to also celebrate your successes in building more global education into your school. Okay, county office charter, very good. Okay. Well, with that, it is 4:30 and I think that's the end of our time. So thank you everyone for either attending or submitting questions or watching the recording. Okay, take care.